All right. I want to say good evening to our viewing audience. I am so excited to be present tonight as I get the opportunity to talk with one of my dear friends. Brother Otha Smith and I have been friends since Southwestern Christian College back in the 80s. And he and I worked together in Tau Phi Kappa, and we worked to develop a midweek series of activities to encourage the campus. And we had tremendous success. Since then, we've kept in touch, and I've had the privilege of watching Otha's ministry flourish. I can actually recall when we were much, much younger. I can recall him talking about what he wanted to do in Louisiana. And to see all these years later, to see his dream come to fruition and to see that he's still faithful to the gospel call is just a wondrous, it just brings a wondrous sense of joy. What makes Otha so unique, and there are a number of things, you're going to hear about that, is that Otha is a church builder. And I maintain that we don't have a lot of church builders today in our fellowship. A lot of us come into congregations that are already established and we're trying to maintain as best we can. But someone who can come in and from scratch build a work or can take an existing work and redefine the culture, redefine so many points and aspects, that really doesn't happen. Oath has done that. So I've asked him in our digital evangelism series to talk to us about church building. And here at the Vineyard, as we are looking at retooling our congregation, we just need to get the help and advice and expertise of men like Otha to help us on our journey. So, Brother Smith, we're so glad to have you with us here on tonight. Why don't you get us started by, of course, saying hello and just talking with us about how you got your ministerial start.
All right. First of all, I want to certainly say hello to everyone, and then it's good to be with my good friend John. Now John said we were having a conversation, so I'm going to try, John, to be professional, and I'm not going to try to treat John like I would if it was just me and John talking. Now
Right.
those of you who know John, everything John just said about me made me feel like I've actually done something in these last 25 or 26 years of ministry. So I want to appreciate John for that. John need to get a second job because surely John can make a fella feel like if he didn't feel good about himself when John get to introducing you, Lord have mercy, you feel like you've done a whole lot. And so John has been very kind to me, and I want to thank him for that. But yeah, I'm a 1992 graduate of Southwestern Christian College, of course, in Terrell, Texas, and shortly after leaving Southwestern, I won't necessarily say, John, that it was my plan to be in Louisiana.
Okay.
As much as I just think that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. But while I was at Southwestern, I actually got involved with doing internships with Thomas Foster, of course, in Houston, Texas. And as you know, Brother Foster, and we want to pray for Brother Foster. I don't know if you know, but he's been in the hospital. I checked, he was on a ventilator. So yeah, so my heart is every time I mention his name tonight, if I get a little sensitive about it, it's because I'm always thinking about him at this point. But he is instrumental in really me being in Louisiana at this point, because whenever I did internships with Brother Foster, Brother Foster is a working preacher. By working, I mean he's a preacher that his interest was in evangelism. In fact, when Brother Foster took the work in Houston in the early 70s, that congregation I think was at around 300 or so members, and at its apex, Brother Foster was able, with the help, of course, of the elders there and other deacons at the congregation, to grow that congregation to well over close to 2,000 members. So,
wow.
so I think just being with Brother Foster every summer, doing all my internships with Brother Foster, he made the internships about doing personal work. So every summer when John was at with his dad or with some other preacher, they were teaching him how to exegete scriptures, and John was learning hermeneutics, and John was doing all the other stuff. I was out walking in the sun, knocking on doors. That's the way Brother Foster trained us to be out working. And so really, John, that's really how I got into Louisiana. Louisiana was not on my map at all. And then I think it was in the summer of 91, he sent me to South Louisiana, to a little place called Broussard, Louisiana. Well, Fifth Ward at that time was thinking about planting a church there in that city. So it was my role, along with another guy who went to Southwestern. I don't know if you remember Kenneth Skinner. He went with me to Broussard. No, John. No, John, it wasn't Skinner. It was Emmett. You remember Emmett Washington?
Of course, yeah, Emmett, of course.
Because every time I went somewhere, I took one of the guys with me, and Emmett Washington went with me to Broussard, Louisiana. And ironically, we spent about 8, and every time we did an intern in the summertime, Brother Foster always had us do about 8 weeks. And it was 8 weeks of knocking doors. And ironically, I met my wife on that trip. So, and my wife is from Lafayette, Louisiana. So I met her. I walked into one of the congregations there. And of course, John, my story has always been, when she saw me, she wouldn't let me leave. Now, she'll probably tell a different story, but I like my version better. So that's really how I got into this evangelism thing, man. It was with the Fifth Ward Church in Houston, with the elders there. Thank God for Bensel Smith. Thank God for men like John Tillman Sr., men like Bob Gomes. Many of these men have died and gone on to meet the Lord. Nolan Alexander. I mean, these are men that, they believed in me, believed in what I was trying to do, and I didn't know what I was doing, but they believed in me and what I was trying to do initially, and that's how I got into Louisiana.
So you credit a lot of your success to Fifth Ward.
I do.
Go ahead.
I do. Fifth Ward is in my opinion, I'm being very biased about it. One of the greatest churches in this brotherhood.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I was
to this day, Fifth Ward is still supporting congregations in the states and out of the states, and they have poured a lot of money into the state of Louisiana, and they have been supporting me since 1989.
Wow.
They were fully supporting me at one point, and then of course, as we developed ministry and ministry was able to take on more support, we cut back on some of that, but they still support me even to this day.
Wonderful, wonderful. So as we're trying to understand your story has a lot to do with the evangelistic fervor of the evangelist, Brother Foster.
Yes, sir.
So what role does the persona and disposition of the preacher, what role does that play in developing and shaping other men and women to be instrumental in teaching the lost?
Well, I mean, as I say, I will continue to, as I say, to mention Brother Foster simply because, John, I think, and when you look at Brother Foster, because you know Brother Ben Foster, right?
Of course.
A lot of people, and that's Brother Tom Foster's brother, but of course the way they got into ministry is somewhat different. Brother Foster, I don't think was necessary. He actually went to school in engineering, and so he had a master's in engineering, and then I think at some point Brother Foster had a call up, on his life for the Lord to be in ministry. And when you talk to him, he never felt like that, that he was the preacher, as they say, being, was a preaching machine.
Right.
So I think Brother Foster took on more of the, and not to say Ben doesn't have it, but Brother Foster took on more of the practical work ethic of preaching. if I'm explaining what I mean. If you don't necessarily think that that's your great gift, but then you got another gift, which was a powerful work ethic. One of the things that really got me interested in ministry was what Brother Foster did with my father, what Brother Foster did with my uncle. I got to give the Fifth Ward Church credit for that, because here you have two men, and my dad and my uncle, who were converted to Christ. And then at Fifth Ward, Brother Foster had preaching classes. And so he was actually doing what Paul told Timothy to do. You take what you learn and commit it to faithful men who will teach others also. So that might be the foundation platform of how I embrace what I'm doing, because I saw Brother Foster do it with people like my dad and with people like my uncle, who were converted to Christ. And then Brother Foster began to mold and shape them, first of all, in evangelism. And then it led them to, of course, my dad didn't go to Southwest, and my uncle eventually would go. Even Brother Gary Smith and other guys, Brother Foster took these guys and molded, shaped them. But I think with all of us, he demonstrated and a work ethic of personal evangelism, of meeting people where they are. In fact, John, one summer when I did an intern, Brother Foster, he was looking at trying to put some glass window plates into a building that he was trying to buy. And it was myself, and I think at that time, Kenneth Skinner, he asked us to get into this trash bin to get these glass windows. We were struggling. But I'm going to tell you what won me over about him. He had a tie on, because he's always dressed with a tie in every day. And he jumped in the trash can with us.
Wow.
When I saw Brother Foster do that, I say that's ministry, man. Everything that he asked us to do,
he did.
He was also out there doing it with us. So I'm just saying, I don't know if that's helping, but
it is.
That's what shaped my mentality, even about being in ministry. I understood that it was not just about sitting in an office somewhere, sitting behind a desk or wearing a suit. In them days, we thought we had a suit and a briefcase. We was a preacher.
Correct.
Brother Foster never carried a briefcase, and he only had a suit jacket on Sunday. Most of the time, his sleeves were rolled up, and we was out walking the street, knocking doors. So that's pretty much how I embraced it. And I saw my dad do it. I saw my uncle do it. I saw John Tillman Jr., Garden Oaks in Houston do it. There's a lot of preachers out there, man, that if they spend any time with Brother Foster, they embrace doing personal work. So
okay, all right. Now, where is your dad and where is your uncle preaching now?
My uncle is at the 20th Street Church of Christ in St. Petersburg, Florida, and my father, just a couple of years ago, he started a new work in Manning, Louisiana, which is north of where I'm at here in Lafayette.
Okay, good. So it really feels like Brother Foster and the Fifth Ward congregation, if you look at the church as a tree,
right,
and then from the tree you had all the different branches.
It's a lot of them.
And then from those branches you had branches, but it all comes back to that tree.
John, you got in Opelousas, the way the congregation here in Opelousas was started. Fifth Ward poured money into a guy by the name of Manuel Edwards. He was in the same preaching class in Brother Foster's preaching classes in the early 70s and 80s. In Shreveport, Louisiana, you got the Hearn Avenue Church of Christ there with a guy named Brother James Spearman. He was in that preaching class with Brother Foster. Right. I'm just saying, when you look at what I was surrounded around was a lot of preachers, and they all had the same mentality of Brother Foster. And I never want to leave the elders out, because elders are important to what preachers are also trying to do, because they sign checks to make sure that when you want to try to go somewhere and you want to try to plant a ministry, you need the elders behind you as well. So the Fifth Ward Church in Houston was strong about it in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and they're still strong about it right now.
Wow.
So all those elders, hey, listen, all those elders that are there now, they come from under that same tree.
Wow. Incredible. So how did Brother Foster, how did they work out compensation and, paying for all of this whole operation? Was it that the church was built around evangelism and developing churches? Or did the guys do that and have a job? How did he do? I mean, you've just given us the names of almost 15 to 20 guys right now. How was all that funded?
Well, most guys, you know, in most cases, in many cases, most guys, you know, if we're gonna try to get involved, we're trying to plan a work. You know, we bringing something to the table as well.
Okay.
So some of the guys that I mentioned already, most of the guys were independent men who were working already anyway. And what Fifth Ward would do is, you know, they would, you know, find out what was needed, and they would support every brother based upon the need. You know, now I still hold a letter, John, from when I left Southwestern and I went to the elders at Fifth. I still remember to this. It's something I hold a lot of pride in. When I went to them and told them that I wanted to come to Louisiana after I graduated from Southwestern to do, you know, to work with the churches here. And I still had a letter that Nolan Alexander and John Tillman Jr., Tillman Sr. Signed for me. And I remember that they committed to me $867. and they wrote a contract. And they say, now, Otha, you sure you want to go? You know, Louisiana's a tough state. You sure you want to go there? And as I say, man, I was young and green, but I had energy. I had excitement about, just coming to Louisiana and trying to see what I could potentially do. And so, yes, they supported me with 867. And then, of course, man, listen, every preacher needs somebody in their corner.
Correct.
So I keep coming back to Brother Foster, man. Brother Foster's always treated me as a son. And so I'm sure that when they were sitting around the table and after I got married and needed more money, they supported me more. But John, I want to tell you something. There's another good friend of mine at the Fifth Ward Church by the name of Robert Goins. And he's in the hospital right now as well on a ventilator machine. But when I came here to Louisiana, and the members of the church of Fifth Ward believed in me so much that Robert would go through the church and he found 20 members and asked them to, would they give $20 to support me every month on top of the $867 that they'd already given me. Man, he was sending me $600 a month because people were giving more. Now, when the elders saw it, they increased the money they were sending me. So with all these guys, man, it's good to have a strong congregation behind you that believes in evangelism. So, but in many cases, we all work. But I didn't hold another job for several years. My full-time job was what I was doing, trying to plant works, trying to support other congregations. And then here recently, I've started to work in the school system.
Okay. So I'm curious. With so much coming out of Foster and all of those associated with Fifth Ward, have you taken on that kind of disposition today? Do you have men that you've trained, churches that you've helped put together? Have you kind of continued the same spirit?
Yes, sir. And I think, John, here again, just looking at the model of what I saw at Fifth Ward with Brother Foster, with the elders there, and how they went about, training men and teaching men who were able to teach others. I just basically came here and I just basically did the same thing. So I don't want to make it sound like, that I had some big plan. I don't guess I did. I was young. And one thing I knew that when you start churches when they're young, you're a long way off, man, from having elders or deacons.
Right.
But one thing I did know that I could do, I could try to encourage and inspire other young men who might want to be in the ministry. And so, over the last 25 years of this ministry, I know that we've sent from out of Lafayette, we've seen at least, let's see, Brother Amram Joyner, who is in, he's in Warden, Texas now. But he also did internships with Brother Foster as well. And as sharp as Brother Amram is, exegetically, he did this. Brother Foster had him doing the same thing I was doing putting up tents, because they were doing tent meetings. So it wasn't a whole lot of men sitting in the room and exegete scripture. It was a lot more about working, and you did that other stuff on your own time. But you got Brother Amram Joyner. You got a guy named Brother Brandon Robertson, who came out of Lafayette. He also went to Southwestern. My brother-in-law, Brother Mark Dunn, he went to Southwestern for a little while. And then there are other guys, man, that I wasn't necessarily responsible for them being in ministry, but I encouraged them to go to Southwestern. One of my brother-in-laws in the city of Baton Rouge, Brother One Chin Bills, very powerful preacher. Brother Bills, he went to South. I like to believe that, I've had some influence in encouraging Brother Bills as well. And he's doing a wonderful job in the city of Baton Rouge. He comes out of Ville Platte, of course, with Brother Abram Arby. And I was with Brother Arby for a small stint when I was at Southwestern as well. And then you got a guy by the name of Brother Jaworski Parker. He's in Opelousas now. But now he did all of his training with me. He was with me for about 10 years. Man, I'm talking about John, just a fine young man. I mean, one thing I can't take credit for guys being, good men, but, and I don't like taking credit for them being in ministry. All I can say is a lot of these guys worked with me for 10 years. They saw my work ethic. They got the same work ethic. I mean, they know that if you're gonna try to build works, you're gonna have to be working at the same time you try to do it. I got a young man with me right now, Brother Nathan Silverand. Now he's out of Lake Charles. I won't let Brother Gaines take credit for that. Mill Street likes to try to take credit for Silverand. Silverand wasn't preaching until he got around Smith, and he's a wonderful, fantastic young gospel preacher, man. So I mean, you got a young man in Fort Worth by the name of Kahima Alexander who did some time. He went off and studied in ministry. Is a minister as well. So several guys, man, that are out there. Brotherhood doesn't know them, but the Lord knows them, and they're doing great work. They're doing a great work for the Lord.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now you mentioned that quite a few of these young men, like us, passed through Southwestern. Some a little longer than others. Would you say that Southwestern was an encouragement to your ministry and your teaching?
Now, John, let's see. When we talk about you trying to make me cry, John, but I'm not gonna let you do it. I'm not gonna let John do it to me. Now, John, let me tell you something. This if I could choose, man, 4 years of my life, and that's something I've had to think about. You start thinking about, I've been on earth 53 years, so I don't want to leave anybody out. But if I'm choosing 4 years, man, with everybody that was in my life within the 4 years, that way I'll get everybody in there, my mom, everybody still be in there. Doc, hey, man, that was some of the best time of my life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's hard for people to understand because the conditions that we lived under wasn't great. The food we ate wasn't great.
The dorms?
Wasn't great at all. It's a lot better than it is now.
Correct.
But I don't care who they got at Southwestern right now and how better the dorms are and the facilities are now. Brother, what we had when I was there,
right?
I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world. I mean, that's some of the best times of my life.
Yeah. Man, we had so many memorable chapel services.
Yeah.
To see Brother Foster get up there and make those announcements, and to see Dr. Evans.
You're trying to make me cry, John.
Sorry, man. But to see that man at the peak of his brilliance.
Yeah, man.
When we were there, Otha, we had 300 kids.
Yeah.
And it was just transformative for me. At the time I went to Southwestern, I actually went there to sing on a music scholarship, and I left preaching.
Yeah, I know you did.
So like it was the environment, it was the encouragement, it was, we're needed to play a part in the development of the church.
Right.
Will you take on the charge?
Right.
Of preaching and helping to develop. So I'm just grateful, and I'm glad to see that you feel the same as well.
Oh yeah,
you
man.
know, and with Dr. Seamster and all that he and the staff are trying to do, we just wish them well. Now, let me kind of go back to some of the questions that you and I have been talking about. So you're coming to a place, you do personal work,
Right.
you're teaching the gospel, they're assembling with you. So can you walk us through some of the either the lessons or some of the things that you talk to them, that you teach them about as you're discipling them? What does discipleship and teaching look like in your ministry?
Well, one thing I've tried to do for myself in ministry, I I always try to teach from the inside out, meaning that um I had when you develop when you plant church and then you start um developing church, man, from the ground and you baptizing people. I had I had to spend probably the first 5 or 10 years of ministry, man, just trying to develop the church from the inside out. Like some people just caught up on, let me go try. We of course we're still trying to reach people um, that are not saved, but I had to make sure the environment um, was healthy. And being honest, John, that's been a struggle, man, throughout my ministry. Is trying to make sure that the environment um, is healthy uh, for growth. Because if it's not a healthy environment for growth, then you can baptize people and get them into uh, the body of Christ, but then you don't keep them around because the environment is not healthy. It's not conducive for growth. And so what I've done throughout my ministry is I've made it about trying to develop the church from the inside out. So I've tried to make sure that my ministry in the pulpit as well as in the Bible classes is designed to help the church to develop and grow spiritually. Because really, man, you got to give the congregation and the people you work with, if you're gonna, we're gonna give our credit, got to give it to them. If I do my job well, then they'll make me look like, that I've done a great job, and then I'll be on your program and you'll be telling everybody how good I did. But actually, when I do my job well with trying to help develop them and teach them from the inside, then they'll go out and network and start to bring people in, into an environment that is healthy enough for people to still grow. So I tell you, one of the things I've done, John, there's a lot of books, man, that when I first started, like I said, I was young and I didn't actually know. I know what I saw Brother Foster do, so I pretty much emulated that. But I ran across a book, man, by the name of a guy. But you probably heard this guy. You ever heard of Marvin Phillips?
Of course.
Marvin Phillips wrote a book, man, one of the best personal evangelism books I've ever read. And I'm not a brilliant thinker like you, John. I'm just a practical guy. So what I do, John, I find things that are practical. This guy did this book, man, entitled The Joy of Church Growth. I think that's what it's called, The Joy of Church Growth. This guy had 4 principles, man, that I built my ministry on, and I know it works. He took all those principles, man, from the book of Acts, Acts chapter 2, which you want to know how to develop churches, just go to the book of Acts and start there and see what they did, and you'll kind of get an idea of it. But that guy had 4, you got time? 4 principles.
Yeah, go ahead.
The first one that he uses, man, is a principle of be right. It's like 4 B's. Be right. So the first thing I did, man, I made sure that what I was teaching and what I was implanting into the hearts of the people in the congregation was right. It's got to be right. It can't be right because I say it's got to be right because it's based upon what God says. It's based upon what the Word of God says. So I just want to make sure I'm right. And now some people said about me, oh, he's traditional. Oh, he's this or that. I tell people, no, I'm not traditional. I'm not conservative. I just want to be right. And the only way to be right is I must teach the right message. So I'm trying to make sure that any messages that I'm teaching are right. If it kind of, man, wavers outside of that, I just stick with what I believe fundamentally is just right. So that's the first thing that I did, was made sure that what I was teaching was right. The second principle in that book, man, is the principle of be nice. I've taught people where I preach at, our obligation is yes to be right, but make sure we also are nice while we are right. Because a lot of times in the church, man, we grew up in an era where preachers would just tell folks stuff and
Correct.
you just cut them and all that. But and now honestly, John, when I was a little boy preacher, I had that same spirit as well. But I've
Okay.
learned as I've grown, it's not enough just to be right. You got to make sure you're nice as well. That's one of the principle in Marvin Phillips. And niceness starts, man, from within the congregation. That's why the Bible says that they were breaking bread from house to house.
Right.
They were eating their meat with singleness and gladness of heart. They were treating each other nice. If we're not nice to each other, man, they're going to stay at the Baptist church, but people treat them nice. They might not be right over there, but they're nice. Y'all know that people want to be around nice people. People don't care how right you are.
Correct.
If you're not nice. And then the other principle was be right, be nice, and then be excited. Because the Bible says they were praising God, having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church. So there has to be an excitement. And I'm not talking about manufactured excitement. Like, now, when I was a young preacher, John, I thought I had to preach a certain way to get them excited. But then as I've grown and learned, if I can get them excited about being right, if I can get them excited, man, about being nice to each other,
right,
then when that excitement hits the community and people see it, they want to know what's going on. And then the last principle that Marvin used, and I still use them to this day, be fearless. We have to be fearless. We have to be bold. We have to have the courage to go out and teach our rightness, show our niceness, show our excitement, and be fearless enough to get out there, man, and and contend earnestly for the faith. And that's what we still do to this day. And hey, I think it's work. So I'm just saying that's what I developed my ministry from the inside out. If we can't love each other, then man, we ain't got a shot at it.
Right. All right. Let me just take a quick break and to tell our watching and viewing audience that I'm monitoring our Facebook comments. So make sure you like today's broadcast, share it on your page. If there's a question that you'd like to ask Brother Otha, I want you to go ahead and type that question in, and I'll immediately work that into our rotation. If you're watching us on YouTube, like our channel, subscribe to our channel. We're just trying to grow the way that people are interacting with us here at the Vineyard. So thank you again for your time on tonight. Looks like I see Sister Love is with us tonight, my good friend here at the Vineyard. The Bobos are with us tonight, and our classmate, Otha, Robert Guy.
Robert Guy.
Now, yes, he gave us a shout out.
Hey, look here. Now, Robert Guy, now I don't even know, Robert Guy might not remember O.L. Smith, but I tell you what, Robert Guy, anchored in the Lord. Ain't nobody never sung that song like Robert Guy.
Yes, sir.
Ain't nobody never sung it like Robert Guy, anchored in the Lord. Yeah, I still remember Robert. That's when the church would really sing, man, with the Spirit, by the way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It wasn't just all about being excitable.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little more about some of the dynamics of your interacting with people.
Right.
It sounds like a lot of your success, or a lot of the success in developing churches, hinges around working with people.
Right.
And it can be frustrating to work with people. So how have you been able to maintain your positivity in working with people? Or are you just blessed and you live in a place where the people act perfect, they get along, they love each other, and you don't have no issues? How do you work with that?
I live in a state where down south, where the motto, and I'm not a good French speaker, but I think the phrase is "laissez le bon temps rouler," which is "let the good time roll, brother."
Wow.
So I'm gonna just tell you straight up that they might live by that particular phrase. And I told you I've been doing a study with the 7 churches in Asia Minor, And of course, with every one of those churches, you just study the city. And one of the problems that 5 of those churches had is that they allowed the city to somehow dictate how the conduct of the church.
Okay.
So when I got here, man, and then John, you got to remember, I was born in North Louisiana, in Monroe. So I had to come to South Louisiana and learn the culture. But I believe to this day that God sent me here because I'm just stubborn enough to stand up against laissez-le bon ton relais. Now, I'm not against people having a good time. You know, I'm not against. I'm probably one of the happiest people you'll know. But I think when I got here, I challenged a lot of the cultural thinking that a lot of people had, and they wanted the ministry to somehow be influenced by the culture of the state. But I fought against that. So yeah, the people here are nice, very, very nice people, man. One of the reasons that I almost thought about leaving the state, but the people here, man, are so nice and so friendly. But at the same time, there is a lot of liberalism here because of the Catholic Church, of course. And when I got here, being a fire and brimstone preacher, a preach the word preacher, be instant in season, out of season, I started
Yes, sir.
challenging a lot of stuff that people had not heard challenged here, even by other ministers in the Church of Christ. And I ran into a lot of issues with that. So you can't win them all. But
Right.
the reason I think that I've been successful is because I go right back to what Marvin said. I just make sure I'm right. If I'm right, according to what scriptures say, I don't allow people how they feel about it to dictate what's right, because that's my job is to contend earnestly for the faith. And so yeah, John. Now the people here, people the same everywhere.
Mm-hmm. All right. I have a question from one of the faithful members of our congregation, Sister Marguerite Taylor. I appreciate you taking the time, Sister Marguerite. She asked Brother Otha, how did COVID-19 impact your church evangelism efforts that you described earlier? So if you can just talk a little bit about the last year or so and how you all have been able to do evangelism.
Well, as I'm thinking, probably most preachers, if you're about my age, then John, I wasn't really, I'm still not real strong with computers and with um, YouTubing and Facebooking and Zoom meetings. But I've learned. So what it did for me is I had to learn on the fly. I'm still not really up to speed with it, but I think that COVID-19 actually just kind of pushed us in a direction that we should have been probably using more anyway. One, because it's free. So when we couldn't get out, to impact people by being with them personally, we had to use this means. And actually, it's been great for us. It's been a great tool. It didn't stop us from the efforts that we've been putting. In fact, man, I probably got more videos now on the church's page now, man, from doing videos on Wednesdays and Sundays. And so COVID just forced me to catch up with and catch up to what everybody else is doing. And so on Wednesday nights, we're reaching a lot more people, I think, in this particular, because of this particular means. So
Okay. Talk to us. I've got a question from Brother Trey Loftus. Good to see you, Brother Loftus. Appreciate your presence tonight. He just wanted to know how many members were on the roll there in Lafayette prior to COVID. If you had to look back and kind of say, okay, this is kind of how many we had on the roll. What kind of range would you say it is?
everyone smile, John, because God told David not to censor the people, so he did. But anyway, on the road, John. Well, John, if we just talk about who was showing up before COVID came, because if I had them all in that building, it'll seat well over 500. If I had them all in there, John, I might be able to tell you I had 500. But we probably had about 75 or so people that were coming.
Okay.
before that, because and here, John, it'll be a whole nother hour for us to talk about membership, and when you make being right your foundation, you lose a lot of people along the way.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm happy to say that at the time we had 75 or so people coming, and since that time we were right at about that same number.
Okay.
Because here we can only have 50 people in the services, and so we was always at that number anyway. Now that they've opened up a little bit more, it's still somewhere around 55 to 60 people or so. But we didn't really lose any members, I think, due to COVID. Some people, those are decisions that people made. We lost a good group before the pandemic even showed up, which is what left us where we are now. But yeah, about somewhere around that number right there. About that.
Okay. All right. So it's apparent then that the existing membership can have an influence on the church and the health of the church. If you were talking to a congregation and you're trying to get them geared up on reaching the lost, discipling others, what are some positive things, or what are some things that you can tell them? Because if they're not kind of with the program, they can distract the focus of the church and make the focus something related to their needs. Whereas what we've been talking about this whole broadcast is keeping the main thing the main thing.
Right.
And in this sense, it's teaching the law. So what advice can you give to existing members of the church on how they can help create a culture that's right for evangelism?
Well, I mean, John, like I say, first of all, I think that all of us as preachers, of course, we cannot neglect the inside. That's members that we already have, to the degree that we focus so much attention on outside. So we have to try to figure out how to keep the whole thing balanced. I'm trying to answer your question, but we have to make sure we work, I still say, from inside out, because you've heard the phrase, we got to figure out how to keep the saved. Because now I don't know what's happening where you are, but John, if we're being honest, man, in most churches of Christ, we got more people, man, that are going out the back door. We're losing more people now for different reasons. And so my focus, I'm just saying what my focus is. I try to really focus on keeping the saved, or trying to keep them developed. So throughout this whole pandemic, most of the messages that I've been preaching are response messages. In other words, how to respond to all the stuff that's going on in the world. I think sometimes, man, you can get overly distracted because we want to reach the lost, and that should be our goal, of course, to reach the lost, but we cannot do that to the neglect of people in our congregations that are saved. Because keep in mind, we are all workers together with God.
Right.
I got a job to do. They also have a job to do as well. I got to make sure I'm healthy while I'm doing it, make sure they're healthy as well, so we together can go out and try to reach other people. So for me, there has to be a balance to what we do, because if we're not making sure that we're meeting the needs, when we look at our families in the church, Doc, we losing, man. Look at our children, Doc. We lose, man. Listen, I don't know what's happening where you are, but man, we're losing in terms of maintaining, holding together our families, our memberships, keeping them, maintaining their focus, keeping them from becoming distracted, keeping them from, man, it's tough, Doc. So I'll be honest with you, my focus probably of late has been more about that. Now, because God has blessed me to work on a secular job now, I'm meeting people every day. So I love that. I'm meeting people every day. So I try to get the congregation where I'm at to meet people where they are. But when you come in this place on Sunday, Sunday is not about evangelism. Sunday is about me trying to exhort, to encourage the church to stay focused, to stay faithful, so that when they leave there, they'll go out there, man, and be excited about trying to bring others to the Lord. So, I mean, I just think we got to, like you say, keep the main thing, but let's keep in mind how this evangelism thing is supposed to be working.
Right. You brought up family, and you and I are old enough now to kind of be aware of a lot of the challenges of ministers and their families. Lord knows, it's just challenging in general.
Yeah.
But when you factor in the fact that we're preachers, it can be doubly challenging. So how have you and Sister Smith, how have you guys kind of worked together to keep your marriage tight and right, and the kids, and just continue to be an encouragement? How have you been able to do that?
Well, man, now one thing, John, I've learned, I wish my wife would answer that question. I don't like to be like the fella who just want to say all the right stuff.
Right.
Because it sounds good on TV. But man, I would say, man, for my wife and I, from the way I've seen it, I think she would agree. The whole pandemic thing, man, for me personally, it kind of forced us, man, almost. We were in the same house. I like to believe that my wife and I got along through it. And
all right.
Yeah, because when we were worshiping it from the home, my wife was sitting on the couch, man. She was doing the soprano, the tenor, the alto, and she didn't want to be on camera, but you could hear her in the backdrop. And they supported me through getting set up to do what I have to do, man. My wife is a silent partner in that. She's not gonna say a lot, but my wife supported me through. She even said amen when I was at home preaching, because there wasn't nobody else to say amen. So
right.
Every now and again, you could hear her saying amen sometime. And you know how they go, man. Our wives hear us all the time. And then, of course, for my sons, man, my sons have been very supportive. Of course, one of my sons is a singer. So, he sang the songs and sang the song. It was good for our family, I think.
Okay.
Because we spent a lot of time in this house, and our concern was to make sure that we had something that we could continue to offer through social media to the church, so that we can all still worship God, through this means of social media. So my family, my wife is she can be a hard taskmaster at sometimes, John, but she know what to say to me to get me out of my feelings. That may be tough, but I've been in my feelings a few days, and my wife have to remind me. She'll have to remind me, bro, what I'm supposed to be doing. So,
Yes, sir. All right. So we're about at our time limit, and I wanted to recognize a gospel preacher that you mentioned earlier. Brother Wan Sheen is on the viewing. He's a part of our viewing audience tonight.
Okay.
And what he asked is, he said, "Good evening, brothers." He said, "What is the role of the evangelist as it relates to evangelism?" So we've kind of talked about that, but if you can kind of succinctly speak to that, and then once you're done there, we'll go ahead and wrap things up.
Now, first of all, Brother Wan Chin is my brother-in-law. And
right.
Considering he already know the answer.
Exactly.
If you look at the term evangelist, I think it's going to suggest to us somewhat what our role is. Because an evangelist, my understanding, John, in the scripture, evangelist is one that was able to travel and go and teach and preach the word. That's what the Apostle Paul was. So who in the Bible was planning more works and doing more missionaries than the evangelist, the Apostle Paul? So when you start talking about what our role is, I think my role would be to lead in that area at the congregation where I'm at. I should be leading out in that, in terms, making sure that there are opportunities for the congregation. But John, Man, that's even gotten tough now, man. And I tell Brother Bill that, man, that's gotten tough now, man. You better be an evangelist because you might be the only one out there knocking doors now.
Right.
We have to, because of the change in culture, we may have to start, looking at how we go about it differently. I think I'm doing evangelism now if I go on social media and I can get a group of people out there, man, and preach a lesson or teach a lesson, try to do it that way. But I understand the scope he's saying. But yeah, that's what the evangelist's job is. One who goes out and teaches and shares the word. So of course he's going to be leading others to do the same as well.
Okay. Otha, this has been a very rich hour for us. And I just want you to know how much Felicia and I love you and your wife and your family, and how much we admire you for your work and just, what you set out to do. It takes a special person to kind of go into the wilderness and to hear the voice and to be used of God to accomplish such a great, mighty task. So our prayers are with you. If you'll come back, we'd like to talk with you some more about church building. And I've seen you do it. I'm seeing you do it. A lot more needs to be said, but at least we wanted to get the conversation going on tonight. So please tell the membership there, especially Brother Sister Pete, how much we love them and miss them, and we just wish you well, and we bid you Godspeed. I'll give you our final word tonight. Please go ahead and tell the viewing audience something.
I would tell the viewing audience tonight, the thing that I've been telling the congregation here, man, is whatever you do, stay with the Lord, stay with the Lord's church, stay faithful. Don't allow yourself to conform to what's going on in the world. I mean, if I could say anything, I told the church here Wednesday night, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Don't try to do anything in life by yourself, because Jesus said, without me, you can't do nothing. If I found any success in my life, I owe it all to the fact that I found my strength in the Lord, and I've stayed connected to the Lord. And so I would tell you, if you do that, you're gonna have some setbacks at times. But just remember, every setback may be a setup for a blessing. And I want to thank John and to the members of the church. If you're a member of the church, what John is, John has always been John, always been a loving brother. He was that way at Southwestern. He's always been faithful. He's always been committed. And John can't go wrong. He named all his children after the Pentateuch. He got Bible all in his house.
All right, man. Well, hey,
I had to get that one in.
Hey, right. All right, man. Well, the last thing I'll mention, Sister Carlotta from Dallas, Carlotta Mixon. So good to see you tonight. She just wants us to encourage people to support Christian education, Southwestern Christian College. We're behind Dr. Seamster and his team. Again, thank you so much for everyone who tuned in tonight. Share the broadcast. Have a wonderful evening. God bless from Louisiana and Arizona. We'll see you later. Take care. Bless.